The Blokebusters podcast is proud to be a member of the Pod Bros Network. You can find us, as well as other fantastic podcasts such as Pencil and Ink Review, Another Damn Trivia Show, and Language of Bromance at podbros.com, as well as on most other fine podcasting services. Now sit back, relax, and prepare to share and enjoy the Blokebusters podcast.
Welcome to another episode of our Blokebusters series Film Spotlight, where we have someone on, basically anyone that'll come on to talk about a film they love and a film they hate. And this time out, we have an interesting guest. She is a political fly on the wall, a podcaster, a comedy evangelist, pop culture curator, and descendant of Lyanna Mormont. And I'm assuming I pronounced that correctly, but anyway, she is Kealeen Griffin. How are you doing?
Hi, lovely. How are you, Paul?
Not doing too bad. Yes, unfortunately, Brian had other commitments, so he will not be here today, so it is just me yet again. Alright, we'll start off with the film that you love, and the way I normally do this is I try and guess which genre it's going to be in, because why not? And I think I'm going to go this time with either a horror film or a spy film.
I actually, part of the reason I was hesitant to get involved with my current podcast, Soiled Western Cinema, is because I am actually not a huge horror fan. I am, however, a huge sci-fi fan.
Okay. Damn it, I should have gone with that.
I picked an indie sci-fi film. Well, a quote-unquote indie sci-fi film. And it was made in 2007 before this director, while this director was known, but it was before he really hit it big. Okay. It is Danny Boyle's film, Sunshine.
Alright, this is one that I have not seen despite...
Really?
I know, I keep seeing it like in the listings and stuff, but I never actually ended up watching it.
Okay, this excites me because I am like an evangelist of this film.
Okay.
And obviously this was before Slumdog. It was post Train Spotting, pre Slumdog Millionaire and Jobs.
Yeah, and my wife is a big protester for Slumdog Millionaire. She hated that film, and I really liked it. So it's always interesting.
Why it would make people uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I don't actually fully understand why she doesn't like the film. She just doesn't. I think
some people, it walks a fine line, like considering he's a white English director, it walks a fine line of like exploitation and cultural appropriation. So I guess I get that, but I don't know. I feel like Danny does these things from a sincere point of view. If you look up the cast list of this film alone, I mean, you know he's legitimately about diversity.
Yeah, I've never thought that he would like ever came across as anything other than this is just what this story is.
Right,
So.
That's how I feel too. But I understand why people might think that, especially with like tabloid reporters love to jump over like all over the children from Slumdog Millionaire and what happened to them after the movie. Here's the thing though, like look at what happened to Lindsay Lohan with her parents. They ruined her life too.
Yeah, and there's plenty of child stars that were mismanaged and like having troubles growing up.
I mean, granted, this is on a bit of a more serious human rights scale, but at the same time, it's not right, but it is a product of like the culture.
Yeah.
I think what's really interesting about this movie too is how it, if you look at the cast list, it's like a who's who of, 4 years from now, who's going to be an A-list star.
Yeah, I know that Cillian Murphy
yeah,
is the main guy in it, and having recently started watching Peaky Blinders and also really enjoying him as Scarecrow in the Christian Bale stuff, I'm starting to think that I should really pay more attention to his catalogue of films, because I think
Breakfast on Mars is brilliant.
All right, I'll have to.
It's a film about like this guy who grew up in Northern Ireland in the 70s.
Ah, okay. Michelle
Yeoh, of course. I mean, she was arguably like one of the biggest names in the film at the time.
Right.
Troy Garrity, who a lot of people know from being the white guy trying to make his way in the barbershop films, but more importantly, Jane Fonda's son. Oh, and actually, even more importantly, he was nominated for a Golden Globe in I think it was Soldier's Girl, where he dated. It was a true story of a transgender. He dated a transgender woman, and he was beaten to death for doing so.
Oh.
Yeah. He's done some really underrated work. Rose Byrne, of course, who we all know from Neighbors, Damages, and Bridesmaids.
Troy, whatever. I think, as well.
Yes. Chris Evans, of course.
Yes, and that would be the American Chris Evans and not the British Chris Evans.
Right.
Two very different people.
Not the one who just got fired.
Actually, he left. Let's say
I heard. Okay.
No, he decided he was done. And yes, basically thinking that British Top Gear is unfortunately just done for. So.
Right, I know Joey ruined that for everybody. Joey gets any series canceled.
With the exception of episodes. That's actually still going.
I know, that was brilliant. And also Mark Strong was in this.
Oh, okay.
And
that one's kind of random.
I like it's random, and also it's just unexpected. These people were all on the cusp of stardom when they starred in this movie.
Yeah. And
the plot, in case you guys don't know, is and it starts out the same way it does in the trailer with the Cillian Murphy narration, is that the sun is dying unexpectedly. Obviously hundreds of millions of years before it's supposed to. And it's caused, a global winter. Winter is coming. Winter has come to Earth.
Right.
And so they already sent a spaceship there with a nuclear bomb that had been a device developed by Cillian Murphy. But they were supposed to drop it into the sun from a distance that they keep referring to it as the payload. And from a distance that they could actually survive and come back. But much like another movie, Event Horizon.
Love that one.
I know, but even though it does have some like derivative elements of this, it still feels fresh and original. The ship was called Icarus, which I love. I love this movie. I love this movie so much, I'm going to call it out on its faults, because the movie as a whole is so good that you can overlook these things. Why would you name a spaceship you want to be successful Icarus?
Well, yeah, and that is a little... it's probably because humanity has a sense of humor that's slightly ironic at times. So
maybe they're trying to lean into it to, not jinx themselves. I don't know. But it got past Mercury. It was almost close enough to drop the payload, and then for some reason it just stopped moving and they lost contact.
Right.
So they send Icarus 2, and this time Cillian Murphy goes with them. And there's just so much more complexity with it. They actually look into how that kind of trip and the stress it would put on somebody just traveling there. They don't even get into the point that they're trying to figure out what happened to these people. They're just dealing with their own personal stress, and I feel that's really interesting. They have a psychiatrist on board. they have a botanist on board who has a garden to grow plants for the primary purpose of like providing oxygen.
His name isn't Mark by any chance, is it? Or did they give him a different name there? Because
Yes.
if his name was Mark, then unfortunately the Martians stole that.
Oh, by the way, the guy who I said is the crossover to the next movie I'm going to do was also in The Martian.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I thought it was no. This was Michelle Yeoh's character, the biologist. I'm sorry, a biologist. His name is Corazon. And this is what I thought was interesting. Danny Boyle said she could have any part she wanted, even if he had to change that part from a male to a female, and she chose the biologist.
Well, either he really liked her acting ability or something else.
Well, I don't know. This was like around the time of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and Memoirs of a Geisha.
Right.
She was she was arguably one of the biggest names on the movie.
Yeah. And of course, how could we forget Tomorrow Never Dies?
Oh yeah, we can because I did.
I say much as you want to. You can.
But they had all these people, and then like of course Chris Evans played. He was supposed to be like the ship engineer or something, and considering I actually looked up the budget of this film, it was only I believe 13 million. And I recommend anybody watch it for the special effects because they have like a viewing deck on the ship, and when they get close enough to see Mercury, they invite all the everybody to come on the viewing deck to see Mercury, and you have to like have protective gear on or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful, like it's poetic. But apparently, actually, the psychiatrist played by Cliff Curtis gets like addicted to the viewing deck, and he tries to stay there like to the point where he gets blisters on his face. So there's like something addictive and hypnotic about the sun that starts to drive people mad. And it as they get closer, of course something goes wrong with the ship, and there's an alignment with the shield that basically looks like a giant like leftover lid of a Jiffy Pop, and it gets out of alignment. So of course they have to send somebody out to realign it. Things go wrong. Not everybody survives, but the interesting thing is one of the crew members commits suicide.
Okay.
He's in like he's supposed to be like in containment, but the psychiatrist on board is so obsessed with watching the sun that he doesn't keep a good enough eye on him, and he kills himself.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. How about I'll cut you off there for the plot, just so anyone that listens to this is thinking, "Oh, I want to see it." They don't end up.
Oh no, we're only down about 2 crew members at that point.
All right. Well,
and I would say Rose Byrne keeps referencing a nightmare she has about landing on the surface of the sun, and they flash back to it, and she keeps bringing it up, the surface of the sun.
Okay.
So,
I mean, obviously, if you're on your way to the sun to try and reignite the sun, then chances are you're going to be having dreams about the sun while you keep looking at the sun that you're heading towards.
Right, but it's kind of obvious, like, there's foreshadowing involved, but,
yeah.
And there's motives in terms of power and selfishness, and I will say Chris Evans kind of proved his chops before he was, I think this was around the time of Fantastic Four.
Right.
Which we can all forget, but...
Yes. I personally think his top performance was Not Another Teen Movie. Good.
Especially when he gets the panties thrown at him.
I was going to go with the scene where he had the whipped cream and a banana. Yeah.
You and I are the only 2 people who always think of him associated with that movie.
Well, to be fair, I can see Chris Evans as someone that would still do that film today. Like, if they came to him and said, "We want you to do this role," I think he would do it. He seems like someone that's really up for that.
And that's the thing. He knows well enough to know that, like, that makes him likable.
Yeah, and aside from everything else about the guy, yes, that makes him likable.
Oh, also, this movie spawned one of the most ubiquitous scores to movie trailers that you hear today.
Right.
It was John Murphy's, I think it's Adagio in D minor.
Okay.
And I swear you hear it in everything. But it started from this movie.
So this was, or at least from then up until the boing started and everything like that. Now that's taking over. Okay.
The boss, yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to look out for that. I'll probably at least look up the trailer at some point this weekend.
The Adagio in D minor is not in the trailer, but if you look up like Sunshine John Murphy, it'll pop right up, and you'll be like, so that's where that came from.
All right then. Well, you've kind of gone over the first two questions I had. So how about I jump to what's your favorite moment or scene in the film? And why is that your favorite moment or scene?
Okay, it's a bit of a spoiler alert, but it's halfway through.
Okay.
There is a moment where they dock with the old ship.
Right.
And they're exploring it, and then something goes wrong, and it breaks away, and they have to try to, a few of them had to try to project themselves over back to the ship.
Okay.
And there aren't enough suits. So one of them has to wrap themselves. Actually, no, there's two of them. No, two of them have to. Okay, there are three people left. Two of them have to wrap themselves like in insulation, like spare insulation, literally,
right,
to get themselves back over to the ship. And even the discussion about it, you see like who's really brave, and the justification of keeping yourself alive, and also the effects of it. And obviously not everybody makes it across.
Right.
And even that moment is just so horrifying. It's like, it's not gory, but it's like horrifying in a way you can't turn away from. Like, it's like the whole thing in space, nobody can hear you scream.
Yeah.
And you see how exposure to space, like they show that, like how how your breath is literally taken from you and you become basically nothing.
Yeah.
And but just the moment leading up to that and the whole sequence of that is probably my favorite part.
Okay. It's
thrilling and horrifying and telling. I don't know.
Well, that's always great. That one of those things that can be great about films is, especially if it's gripped you, like it can do those things and really make you think about a bunch of stuff, but also forcing you to have to come to terms with it very quickly and continue on with the story. So, all right.
And also, at such a small budget, how they did something like so precise and in a way that was so captivating with graphics, considering they had such a small budget.
Yeah, and that's always interesting when you look back at some of the films that you really liked and you go, wow, these guys didn't have any money, especially compared to now.
Especially compared to the one I'm going to talk about next.
All right, well, just before we jump to that then, my last question for this side would be, I'm assuming there is no sequel to this one. I haven't heard of one if there is, but would you want a sequel? And if you would, what would you want it to be?
I don't want a sequel so much as I would like them to go back and refine the third act.
Okay.
Because as much as I passionately advocate for this movie, and I think everybody needs to see this movie, the third act is undeniably flawed. And it slips into a lot of like derivative and cliched kind of like sci-fi horror tropes. And I was disappointed in that. It feels like there was I would like to talk to Danny Boyle or the producers or the writers to figure out what happened because it felt rushed and almost like they panicked to try to get it together. Maybe they ran out of money and they just need to figure out what to do. Like the effects actually in the final sequence are beautiful. And the final sequence is actually great. But I would say the 20 minutes in between, 25 minutes in between is problematic. And that's what I would rather see done than a sequel.
Okay.
Well, and actually the final like moment, they did another voiceover at the end.
Right.
And it left you satisfied with the resolution.
Oh, good. And I know some films that are just really great, and in the last couple of minutes just kind of fall flat, and that can slightly ruin it for you. But as long as it finishes well,
and that's what makes it so unique is that the first 2/3 of the movie, brilliant,
right?
And then there's like 20-25 minutes where it's just like, oh, you're gonna go this direction, really? And then the last like 2 minutes, you're like, I can live with that.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll definitely have to look at it. I think you've sold me on that one. I'll check it out as soon as I can. Having said that, I don't know when that will be, but I will try. All right. So moving away from the one that you like into the one that you don't like so much. And as is well documented by now, I'm not even going to bother guessing which genre it's in because, as you well know, there are so many bad films in so many genres, it's just impossible to guess. So why don't you tell us what film don't you like that you want to talk about today?
I wanted to tie it in, again, because we've had something that has been a sci-fi film this summer that has been so terrible, I don't even want to cover it on my podcast because it just seems exhausting. But we still have a few that we don't know, we're nervous about, but we don't know yet. So I was going to keep the theme going for summer. Prometheus.
Alrighty, this is one I have seen.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand why people don't like it, and I agree somewhat with most of what they say. So why don't you tell us specifically what it is that makes you not like this film?
Okay, here's the thing. Like, this is why it's more interesting to me to talk about rather than a movie I outright hate. I don't so much hate this movie as I resent it.
Right.
It is so much promise, so much hype, and such a disappointing payoff. It is such a frustrating example of mediocrity. It is one of those movies I have watched countless times hoping it'll get better somehow.
Yeah, I don't know if I ever rewatch film thinking it will be better, but sometimes I'll rewatch film just to go, yeah, this was shit.
Oh no, I know it's not going to get better, but I still trick myself into watching it again, saying, maybe this time I'll see something in it that'll be like, oh yes, it is good. And the viral marketing campaign for this film was brilliant. It was so good. And compared to how bad this movie was, I mean, my God. They did a fake TED Talk for the viral marketing campaign. I mean, really.
That's great. I don't think I've seen that.
And they did the ads for like the Adam, they call them the Adam dolls.
Oh yeah, and it's like I've seen that as introducing David, isn't it?
Yeah, or David. I'm sorry. Like, and his eyes opened behind the plastic, like he was in a Barbie case. And then they had Guy Pearce doing, like, as a young man doing TED Talks. I was so excited for this movie based on the viral marketing. And then this happened.
Yeah, this film, I fully understand what it was they were trying to do with it.
Right.
And I'm all for the rebooting, as it were, of the Alien series, because they kind of did everything they could with what they had. So just trying to continue on without Ripley, but making it a sequel, that doesn't work. So yeah, you needed to reboot it. But yeah, it really did just kind of fall flat on its face. And no disrespect to the one astronaut that couldn't run to the side in the later parts of the film. They just did the running straight away from the thing falling down. But anyway, that's...
Oh, God. And they had so much to work with. And they worked with all the wrong... I feel like the focus was on everything wrong with this movie. Honestly, okay, like, the first 20 minutes of this movie were like, I would just take that as a short film. I want a novel written about, like, the prologue.
Yeah, that opening bit with the alien that dissolves.
Yeah.
That was done in a way that should have worked, but just left so many questions that were then not answered in the slightest.
Because it was so much more interesting than the rest of the movie.
Yeah, and I also thought that later in the film, and I'm going to try not to spoil it, but later in the film, you come to realize what that alien was, but it didn't look like the other ones. It looked different than that.
But,
so
yeah, it wasn't a real answer.
Yeah, I think that is the big problem with this film, is it gave you so many more questions than answers, and sometimes answered a question that wasn't asked in the first place. So
it was all set up and no payoff.
Yeah, and fair enough, some films can do that because they are designed to be 2, 3, 4 films, so you can have set up for things that will be paid off. But this film, even though there is sort of a setup for a sequel, really, it didn't feel like it was set up for one.
No, not at all. And also, okay, guys, spoiler alert, plug your ears if you haven't seen it. You need to see it just to understand our frustration. You don't kill off Idris Elba if you're going to make a sequel.
Yeah, yes.
I think, don't you think that'll, like, leaving him alive, like, I would be very interested with, and I don't even remember Numi's character's, Elizabeth, was that her name?
I think so.
Elizabeth Shaw, yes. If Elizabeth Shaw and David were going off into the universe, that would have been more interesting to me. That would have been like, okay, I want to see what those three are going to do.
Yeah. I mean, I think there is one film where you can justify the killing off of Idris Elba, and I'm not going to say specifically what it is because it's sort of a spoiler for the end of that film, but I will say that the sequel for that film has been in jeopardy for a while, but might be being made. So I'm going to leave it as cryptic as that.
Kind of like this one?
Yes, but unfortunately I believe this one is going to have a sequel. I'm willing to give the sequel a go because surely by this point they must have heard the uproar about the first one.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I just read something very interesting. The viral video campaigns were directed by Ridley Scott's son.
Nice.
So, can we just have him direct the sequel?
Yeah, there we go. Maybe.
Luke Scott, please direct the sequel if you're listening. Well, whatever.
No, apparently Ridley Scott is directing the sequel.
Yeah.
So...
Well, he needs to listen to Luke, okay?
Yeah, maybe he's directing it, but Luke's just sort of sitting next to him going, you sure you don't want to do this instead? So, how about we do this? That'll be fun.
And also, I'm a sucker for anything that uses Chopin's Raindrop Prelude. So, like David's whole hyperspace education, that sequence in the beginning, I mean, I loved that. And I hate this. Okay, I'm so angry about this movie. but I loved Michael Fassbender in it. I feel like if the rest of the characters had more interesting dynamics, it would have been better because it just seemed like he was acting in a different movie than the rest of them.
Well, yeah, and Fassbender is a fantastic actor.
Oh, phenomenal.
And the fact that he was in this, it was supposed to be like, okay, this would help the film along. It's like, no. Like, and I don't want to fault the other actors, but it's kind of like, let's say, if you were to have a film with Robin Williams and only kid actors, like, I don't know,
Robin
Jack.
Williams and Dane Cook.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I'll grant you that, yes. That would be the level of difference between Fassbender and everyone else in this thing.
Well, and that's why I think Idris Elba should have lived, because he's the only one capable of rising to Fassbender's level.
Yeah, pretty much.
And I think, yeah, okay, and there's so much about Michael Fassbender's, like, android character. Okay, this is so weird, but, he had a sense of smell, and I know he's trying to be superhuman. He ate. So does that mean he, like, recycles it in his body, or does he, like, defecate plutonium, or change it into the plutonium? And also, when he was smelling the slime in the cave, how he reacted to it. They couldn't decide how much of an android they wanted to make him. Yeah. I mean, he went back and forth. He was like a bipolar android.
Well, the biggest problem with his character is he is the newest android that is supposed to be indistinguishable from humans. So basically setting up the androids from aliens. But he is also designed to act a certain way around certain people as well. So he gave him too many parameters to work with.
They made a synthetic sociopath. I mean, that explains Hannibal Lecter. Maybe that's David's descendant. I don't know.
Maybe. And to be fair, he plays it perfectly. It's
just... Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, any of the inconsistencies, I don't blame him for. I blame the writing and the direction.
Yeah. It was one of those films that when I was watching it, I kept looking at my watch. I was like, how much more of this is left? Like, really? Is it still going?
And then, you have Charlize Theron getting, like, basically, like, mowed down by the, like, what looks like a Price is Right, like, wheel.
Yeah, and yes, this would be the person who, despite being a relatively intelligent person, does the film thing of something is falling at me, so I'm just going to run in a straight line, and hopefully I get out at the top, rather than if she'd started running right or left, she'd have been fine.
Zigzag.
Yeah, there you go. Serpentine.
Hey, Serpentine. Okay, hey, Game of Thrones fans, you'll appreciate that. R.I.P. Rickon. But
I really hope that's not a spoiler for a recent series, because otherwise I'm going to have to bleep that
out. If anybody doesn't know yet, the Game of Thrones, the season finale was like over 2 weeks ago. So no.
Well, my wife is halfway through season 2.
Oh. Okay, just delete the R.I.P. Rickon part.
I might have to. Maybe I'll shove a hold the door line in there or something.
That's a spoiler.
I know it is.
What the hell was Charlize Theron doing in this movie? Like, the best acting she did was the voiceover in the trailer. I mean, my God, she was terrible.
Yeah,
she was better in that movie with Jeff Daniels and was Michael Richards in that movie?
I'm not sure. I can't.
Lawyers. I'm sorry. I'm looking at it. It was in the 90s when she was like first becoming a thing.
Devil's Advocate?
I'm pretty sure. Huh?
Devil's Advocate?
No. It was after that. No, I'm looking real quick. Trial and Error.
I don't know that one.
Michael Richards. Jeff Daniels and Michael Richards, and she is in that movie. She did better acting in that movie than she did in this movie.
I know that she's one of those actresses that is either horrible or
Or
brilliant.
on point.
So, like, obviously Mad Max. Perfect in Mad Max. Brilliant.
Actually, that's her personality as well, from what I've heard from people who absolutely know.
Yeah, probably. And
Well, like from what I hear, like it should not be shocking that she dated Sean Penn.
right. And then, obviously, the other end of the spectrum, she was in The Italian Job and Hancock, and yeah, like.
Well, the Hancock was awesome.
Well, that's the thing.
love that movie.
I enjoyed Hancock. I didn't like her.
No, and how many movies have you said that about Charlize Theron, where you enjoyed the movie but not her?
I honestly can't tell you that because she's one of those people I kind of have face blindness for. So I don't know how many films I've seen that she's actually in.
Because you get tired of her, so you just kind of blend her in with like Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah,
But
pretty much.
speaking of Mad Max, don't you love like the dollar store Tom Hardy in this movie?
Yeah, it's one of the few things that's not too bad about the film, I think.
Okay. By the way, with Numi Rapace, who I like, but it does say something that she really hasn't been in a whole lot of English language features other than this.
Yeah.
The trivia said the Swedish actress Numi Rapace worked on set with a dialect coach to help her achieve the closest accent she could manage. That's rude,
Well, I mean, it's
but true.
I guess. Although, I did look something up. If this is the person I'm thinking of, she is actually fluent in about 4 languages, and English is one of them. So it's kind of interesting that they needed her to have an actual dialect when she speaks fluent English anyway. You think they would
So
just let her keep it?
Well, so maybe the dialect coach like talked her into a bad accent.
Maybe.
Oh, apparently Charlize was originally cast as Elizabeth Shaw,
Yeah.
and she could only be there because she was filming some. Maybe it was Mad Max because of something else. Maybe that's why she seems so pissed off the whole time.
Wait, didn't Mad Max come out like 2 years after Prometheus?
Yeah, but didn't it take forever to film it?
I guess so. If she
I mean,
was...
I'm just spitballing here.
No, yeah. I mean,
It would make sense, and apparently she was like really like traumatized by working with Tom Hardy. It was actually allegedly he's method, but he's lovely.
yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about Tom Hardy.
But I mean, maybe that's it. But that explains why she was so wooden and angry.
What, you mean in
I
everything
just
she
don't
does?
get why they even bothered casting Guy Pearce.
Yeah, I mean, he just does random stuff.
But he played a bigger role in the viral marketing campaign than he did in the movie.
True.
I almost feel like it would have been better as like if it was James Woods or somebody.
That could work. I
James
suppose.
Woods is a son of a bitch.
James Woods is fantastic. He plays my favorite villain of all time, which I'm going to try and have you guess which one that is.
Oh, I'm just thinking of that one where it was about Medgar Evers.
Nope.
It's Alec Baldwin.
Nope, not that.
He played a real life evil guy there.
Well, yeah, I know that he's... Everything I've seen him in, I like him in. But my favorite role of his, by far, is Hades.
In what movie?
Hercules.
Oh, God.
The 97 Disney film.
Oh,
He
no.
kills it as Hades.
He kills it as any villain, which is why, okay, do you agree? He would have been amazing.
Oh, he would have been fantastic. However, the only issue is you would have instantly known he was a bad guy. Whereas there's supposed to be some sort of...
No,
yeah,
like, I feel like he'd know. Like, okay, have Guy Pearce, like, I mean, if somebody had went to shit, like, from old age or whatever, and bad habits, he could ostensibly look like James Woods with some makeup. Like
Yeah.
gone from Guy Pearce to James Woods. There are enough facial similarities where you could pull it off.
Yeah, definitely. It would have been that. Well, that could have been nice. Then you could have seen Guy Pearce as younger, and then Woods
Yes.
as older. Okay.
Instead, you're looking at like, oh, hey, Guy Pearce under like 5 layers of makeup.
Okay, that kind of covers the last question I would have had about this then, which is how would you fix it? And obviously, so far
I was
we've
just gonna say, we just fixed the movie.
yeah, basically we needed to replace older Guy Pearce with James Wood. We needed to get Ridley Scott's son to direct it instead, and
Or
then
just get him to direct the sequel is good enough for me.
yeah, and then somehow have Idris Elba live and just replace Charlize Theron entirely, and then
Yep.
we've pretty much solved it. I mean, I was fine with Elizabeth Shaw as she was.
I like Noomi Rapace. I do. I did like her in that.
Yeah,
But but I'm also tired of like the lead female and the infertility thing. I'm kind of tired of that. Like, I don't know, whatever. I guess that's maybe going back to the whole thing about the engineers and the origin of life in general. But I don't know. On the series Outlander, it turns out it's the man and not the woman.
right.
And that's the reason she never got pregnant. Maybe it's just easier to explain. I don't know. Um,
I mean, definitely for a film like this, it doesn't really matter. They just
but they kind of treat it like it does, though. Like the whole thing about reproduction does matter in this.
well, and she's, if I'm remembering correctly, she's supposed to be infertile or sterile
Right.
or something
And
along
it's
those
like,
lines.
oh, she's pregnant.
And then she's like, "Oh my God, she's pregnant," and that's supposed to be, I guess, the roller coaster is she's pregnant. Hooray! Oh no, like it's not a good pregnancy.
Well, and that's actually like the whole argument with like creating an android that if you create an android that's human but not quite fully there yet, you're basically creating an indestructible sociopath.
Yeah,
Because that's what he does. He like drops stuff in there to see what's going to happen.
yeah, pretty much.
He creates chaos to see what's going to happen.
Well, he has an ulterior directive, I think, is the big problem there. And obviously, you're not supposed to realize that until, what, like 3/4 of the way through the film? Which I think a lot of people then think, oh, well, now when you rewatch it, it'll all make sense. And it still doesn't. It still does just look like he's just going, meh, whatever.
He's pushing over the domino.
Yeah, and now for whatever reason I had that scene in Robots where it's the the Mel Brooks robot who's just been setting up all those dominoes.
Isn't there everything can be like brought back to a Mel Brooks movie?
Well, yeah, just because you don't want to talk about this one, well, how about we just talk about Blazing Saddles first? Alright, well, no, unfortunately we don't have time for that, so alright, I think we've basically reached a nice consensus here of everyone needs to go and watch Sunshine and don't watch Prometheus, and maybe watch the sequel, possibly.
Possibly, yeah. If the trailer for the sequel piques your interest, go ahead and watch Prometheus, but with our warning.
Yes, just bear in mind that you're probably not going to enjoy it.
Right. You're going to be frustrated at the least.
Yeah, and the only thing I can think of is that maybe people that haven't seen the original Aliens will enjoy Prometheus more.
Oh, no. I just think, in general, it's just garbage.
Oh, I agree.
No, not garbage. You know what? No. Okay. My whole point about this is that it's not a garbage movie. It's so just mediocre and full of potential that it refuses to reach.
Yeah, that is the big problem with this film.
It's so American that way.
Yeah. Yeah, especially having seen the Aliens film, and then you see this one, and you're like, oh, it's actually a prequel to the whole thing, and it's just like, it didn't feel like that at all. It just,
Well, that's why he refused to say it was a prequel.
yeah, I believe he said something along the lines of, it has similar similar DNA, I think it was, yeah, but it's not a direct prequel. At which point you say, well, that doesn't make any sense, but okay.
That's when you say bye, Ridley.
Yeah, pretty much. Just you go bye now. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming on and doing this.
Thank you for having me very much.
No problem. So why don't you tell everyone where they can find you?
You can find me pretty much every week. We release our episodes on Thursdays for our Soiled Restroom Cinema podcast.
Yes.
And you can also find me on Twitter at Kel to the Lean, KELLEAN to the LEAN at Twitter.
Yeah, I was going to say, it seemed like you were slightly messing up your own Twitter handle. It's like,
I'm stressed out from this terrible movie.
That's right. Aren't we all? Alright, so yeah, do go check her out there, and do check out the Soiled Western Cinema podcast. It is a lot of fun to just rip into those bad films, and unfortunately they have had me on to do the same thing, so...
Unfortunately, Paul is especially astute at ripping apart Adam Sandler films. So,
well, it's not that I wanted to be, it's that that's what...
I feel bad because you're so good at it. Because every time Honor says, we need to have Paul, and I'm like, no, that's not fair to him.
Yeah, I think I might have to put my foot down for that.
Actually, I think you deserve a request.
Well, I'll look into it. Alright, so yeah, do go check them out there, and as always, you can get a hold of us as well on Twitter, Facebook, Blokebusters. We're there. Email us, blokebusterpodcast@gmail.com. We're on Instagram, not much, but we're there. And we have our website, blokebusters.webs.com. And one more time, thank you very much, Kealeen, for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me, Paul.
No problem. All right. Bye-bye.
Have a good night.